I am James Washington, 74 years old and somehow still reeling from the betrayal my own son just delivered. As a retired electrical engineer who built a modest life in Charlotte, I thought I'd earned some respect. But last Tuesday, Marcus sent me a bill for $190,000 to pay for his wedding while banning me from attending. Between the venue costs and honeymoon expenses, he had the audacity to write, "Be grateful I'm letting you help," at the bottom. I simply stared at that invoice and smiled coldly. That evening, I called my financial advisor about liquidating certain accounts and contacted my lawyer about contract clauses. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to teach someone that respect cannot be purchased. Growing up in segregated North Carolina meant understanding dignity came from within, not from others' approval. My late wife Ruth and I built our life through honest work and sacrifice. Our 3-bedroom brick house with its small garden and carport represented decades of careful saving and smart choices. Ruth passed 5 years ago from cancer, leaving me to navigate Marcus's transformation alone. During high school and college, he was the son any father would be proud of. Honor roll student engineering scholarship to Duke, respectful young man who called home every Sunday. But somewhere between his corporate promotion and meeting Ashley, his priorities shifted like sand. Ashley Richardson came from old Charlotte money, the kind that whispers rather than speaks, and measures worth by zip codes. At family dinners, she would smile politely while making subtle comments about upgrading their lifestyle and networking with the right people. I watched my son slowly adopt her vocabulary, trading authenticity for aspiration. The first crack appeared at Ruth's funeral. Marcus arrived in an expensive suit with Ashley whispering in his ear about managing impressions and keeping the service tasteful but brief. When I suggested Ruth would have wanted her church choir to sing her favorite hymn, Ashley intervened, saying it might run long for some guests. Marcus sided with her. 6 months ago, Marcus announced their engagement at Sunday dinner. Instead of joy, Ashley immediately launched into wedding plans that sounded more like a corporate merger than a celebration of love. When I asked about the guest list, she casually mentioned they were curating an intimate experience, which apparently meant excluding family members who didn't fit their aesthetic vision. Last month, the final insult arrived by courier. The wedding invitation list somehow omitted my name while including Ashley's yoga instructor and personal shopper. When I called to ask about the oversight, Marcus stammered excuses about limited capacity and complex dynamics before Ashley took the phone. "James," she said in that voice people use when explaining simple concepts to children, "we need this day to reflect our future, not dwell on the past. You understand, right?" I understood perfectly. I understood that my son had traded his backbone for a membership card to a world that would never truly accept him. I understood that Ashley saw me as an embarrassment, a reminder of Marcus's roots that didn't photograph well for their social media narrative. But they had made one critical miscalculation. They assumed that because I was being excluded, I would still finance their fantasy. The invoice sitting on my kitchen table proved their arrogance knew no bounds. Venue rental, premium catering, luxury honeymoon, even a professional photography package designed to document their love story for posterity. What they didn't know was that this retired electrical engineer had spent 40 years understanding how systems work and what happens when you remove the wrong component. They were about to learn that respect and money flow in the same direction, and I was about to redirect both streams. The pocket watch on my mantle ticked steadily, the same rhythm that had counted down Ruth's final days and measured Marcus's childhood years. Now it would mark the beginning of the most important lesson I would ever teach my son about the difference between love and leverage. That evening, I powered up my laptop and began pulling threads. The first search was simple Harbor View Estate. Their website was all marble columns and golden hour photography, the kind of place that charged extra for existing. But buried in their vendor requirements, I found something interesting. They demanded 50% non-refundable deposits and had strict policies about substitutions. Next came Premier Catering. Their gallery showed events that looked like magazine spreads, complete with ice sculptures and servers who probably earned more per hour than I made in a day. What caught my attention was their payment structure: net 30 for corporate clients, but wire transfers 72 hours in advance for private events. Then I searched Platinum Events Photography. Their Instagram feed was a parade of beautiful people at beautiful venues, every shot calculated for maximum social media impact. but it was their VIP wedding package that made me pause. Exclusive social media content, professional editing for publication coordination with lifestyle bloggers. This wasn't just photography, this was image manufacturing. I leaned back in my chair, pieces clicking into place. Marcus and Ashley weren't planning a wedding. They were producing a show complete with a script, staging, and an audience carefully selected for their approval ratings. And somehow I was expected to bankroll this performance while being banned from watching it unfold. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Washington, this is Jonathan from Premier Catering. We're finalizing details for the Washington-Richardson wedding. Just wanted to confirm your payment schedule since you're listed as the primary contact. Call me when convenient. Primary contact. I stared at those words until they burned into my retinas. Marcus hadn't just sent me a bill. He'd made me the financial guarantor for vendors who would come calling when payments ran late. The audacity was breathtaking. I dialed the number. Jonathan picked up on the second ring, his voice carrying the practiced cheer of someone who dealt with wealthy clients daily. Mr. Washington, thanks for calling back. We're excited about the Washington-Richardson event. Just need to lock down that payment timeline. Jonathan, I said, keeping my voice level, I need to clarify something. I haven't approved any charges. If you need authorization, you'll need it in writing from me personally. Silence. Then a careful throat clear. I'm sorry, I thought. The planner said you were handling the account. The planner assumed incorrectly. Don't accept any verbal commitments on my behalf. Everything goes through me directly in writing or it doesn't happen. After I hung up, I sat in the gathering dusk and felt something I hadn't experienced in months: control. For too long, I'd watched Marcus drift away, powerless to pull him back. But money, it turned out, was a language everyone understood, including my son. I opened a new browser tab and searched for someone I hadn't spoken to in years: Damon Turner. He'd been Marcus's best friend since middle school, the kind of kid who ate dinner at our table more nights than his own. While Marcus had moved into the corporate world, Damon had chosen photography, building a modest but honest business shooting real families at real prices. His website was simple, clean, unpretentious. Portrait sessions, small weddings, the occasional corporate gig. Nothing flashy, just good work from someone who remembered that pictures were supposed to capture truth, not manufacture it. I found his phone number and dialed before I could second-guess myself. Damon Turner Photography. Damon, it's James Washington. A pause, then genuine warmth. Mr. Washington, how are you? I was thinking about you just last week. I've been better. Listen, I need a favor. It's about Marcus. I figured it might be. He called me a few months back, asked if I'd shoot his wedding. When I quoted him my rate, he laughed and said they were going with someone more aligned with their vision. Haven't heard from him since. The casual cruelty of it stung. Damon had been like a second son to us, and Marcus had dismissed him for not being expensive enough. I need eyes and ears, Damon. This wedding has turned into something Ruth would have hated, and I'm trying to figure out how to reach my son before he disappears completely. What can I do? You know the industry. You know these vendors. Help me understand what I'm really paying for. There was a long pause. When Damon spoke again, his voice had shifted into the tone of someone choosing sides. Mr. Washington, from what I've heard through the grapevine, this isn't a wedding. It's a debut. Ashley's been telling people it's their coming-out party for Charlotte society. The photography package alone costs more than most people's cars. My stomach tightened. Coming-out party. Think debutante ball, but for couples. The guest list reads like a who's who of Charlotte business. The vendors are all top tier, the kind who specialize in events that get written up in magazines. This whole thing is designed to announce that Marcus and Ashley have arrived. Arrived where? Somewhere you apparently don't belong. The words hung in the air like smoke. I closed my eyes and saw Ruth's face, the way she looked when Marcus graduated from Duke. The pride, the hope, the absolute certainty that we'd raised a good man who would make good choices. Damon, can you get me information, vendor timelines, payment schedules, anything that might give me leverage? I can do better than that. I know people. Let me make some calls. After we hung up, I walked to the mantel and picked up Ruth's photograph. In it, she's holding infant Marcus, both of them glowing with the kind of happiness that doesn't need filters or staging. I traced her face with my finger and whispered an apology for letting our son forget who he was. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus himself. Dad. I heard you called the caterer. I did. Why are you making this complicated? Just sign the contracts and let us handle the details. Marcus, do you hear yourself? You banned me from your wedding but expect me to pay for it. You made financial commitments in my name without asking. You turned your back on friends who loved you because they weren't expensive enough. When did you become someone I don't recognize? Silence stretched between us. When he finally spoke, his voice was smaller, younger. Ashley says you wouldn't understand the position we're in, the expectations. I understand perfectly. You're trying to buy acceptance from people who will never see you as anything more than an interesting addition to their dinner parties. And you're willing to sacrifice your integrity and your family to do it. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. But you're about to learn the difference between funding someone's dreams and enabling their delusions. I hung up before he could respond and immediately called my financial advisor. Robert, it's James Washington. I need to set up a restricted escrow account. I want to control exactly what gets paid and when. As I gave him the vendor information, I felt the first stirrings of something I'd almost forgotten, the satisfaction of setting a boundary and watching other people learn to respect it. Marcus was about to discover that his father's wallet came with his father's values attached. The wedding was 6 weeks away. That gave me just enough time to teach my son the most important lesson of his life, that love cannot be purchased. Respect cannot be inherited, and family cannot be upgraded like a subscription service. Outside, the October evening settled into darkness. Inside, I began planning the kind of education money can't buy, but consequences certainly can. The next morning brought clarity along with coffee. I sat at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, drawing lines and connections like I used to do with electrical schematics. Every system has weak points, places where pressure applied correctly can redirect the entire flow. Marcus and Ashley had built their wedding like a house of cards, beautiful but unstable. All I needed to do was find the right card to touch. My first call was to Robert Chen, my financial advisor. We'd worked together for 15 years, ever since Ruth's diagnosis taught me the value of having someone who understood both money and emergencies. James, good to hear from you. How can I help? I need to set up an escrow account with very specific restrictions. I want to control vendor payments down to the penny. Wedding related. Unfortunately, my son thinks he can spend my money without my permission. I need to show him how contracts actually work. Robert chuckled. I've seen this before. Entitled children assuming their parents' wallets are community property. What kind of restrictions are we talking about? Power basic lighting, food insurance. Nothing decorative, nothing for show. If it doesn't keep people fed and safe, I don't fund it. Smart boundaries. I can have the paperwork ready by this afternoon. You'll have complete control over what gets paid and when. Next, I called Damon back. He'd left a voicemail overnight with information that made my blood pressure rise. Mr. Washington, I did some digging. This wedding isn't just expensive, it's being coordinated like a media event. Ashley hired a publicist to pitch it to lifestyle magazines. They're calling it a modern love story and planning to release photos to social media in a coordinated campaign. A publicist. For a wedding. I gripped the phone tighter. What else? The venue has a waiting list 6 months long, but they bumped someone to accommodate Ashley's family connections. The catering includes a wine pairing that costs more per bottle than most people spend on groceries in a month. And get this, they hired a drone operator for aerial footage. A drone. For dramatic shots of the venue and guests. Apparently Ashley wants footage that could be used for a documentary someday. I closed my eyes and counted to 10. Ruth would have been horrified. She believed weddings were about promising your life to someone in front of the people who loved you. This sounded like a movie premiere. Damon, I need you to do something for me. Can you get inside information on vendor payment schedules? When deposits are due, what happens if payments are late? I can try. Most of these high-end vendors are pretty strict about timelines. Miss a payment window and they'll drop you faster than a hot wire. Good, let them be strict. Strict as honest. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and began drafting what I mentally called my Declaration of Financial Independence. It was a simple document written in language any lawyer would respect and any judge would enforce. I, James Washington, hereby establish the following conditions for any financial contributions to the Washington-Richardson wedding. First, all expenditures must be approved by me in writing prior to commitment. Second, my financial participation assumes my presence and participation as father of the groom. Third, no funds will be released for decorative, promotional, or media-related expenses. Fourth violation of these terms immediately voids all financial obligations. I printed 3 copies, signed them all, and put one in my safe. The other 2 would be hand-delivered to people who needed to understand the new rules. At 2 o'clock, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Ashley standing on my porch, immaculate as always, in clothes that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She held a manila folder and wore the expression of someone accustomed to getting her way through charm and persistence. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "James, we need to talk." "We can talk, right here." Her smile flickered but held. "This is about the wedding, about Marcus, about family. Surely we can sit down like civilized people." "Ashley, every time we've sat down like civilized people, you've tried to convince me that my presence would be an embarrassment. I prefer to stand." The mask slipped just slightly. "Look, I know there have been misunderstandings." "No misunderstandings. You don't want me at your wedding. I heard you clearly. But you do want my money. That's not a misunderstanding, that's a business proposition." She opened the folder and pulled out a glossy brochure. "I wanted to show you what we're creating. This isn't just a wedding, it's a celebration of everything Marcus has achieved. The venue, the guest list, the photography, it all reflects the life he's built." I glanced at the brochure. Harborview Estate looked like something from a movie set, all columns and perfectly manicured gardens, the kind of place where real people felt like intruders. "Ashley, let me ask you something. In all these plans, all these photographs and guest lists and media packages, where exactly do you see love?" "Excuse me. Love. The reason people get married. Where is it in your brochure?" Her composure cracked a little more. "Everything we're doing is about love. We're celebrating our relationship, our future together." "You're celebrating your image. There's a difference. You don't understand the position Marcus is in now, the people he works with, the opportunities that come from being seen in the right places with the right people. This wedding isn't just about us, it's about his career, his future, and his family. His family will always be important to him. Important enough to invite to his wedding." Silence stretched between us. When she spoke again, her voice had an edge I'd never heard before. "James, I'm trying to be diplomatic here. Marcus and I have worked very hard to build something beautiful, something meaningful. We can't have elements that don't fit the aesthetic we've created." "Elements? Is that what I am?" "You're a man who spent 40 years working with his hands in coveralls. Our friends are doctors, lawyers, executives. They expect a certain level of sophistication." And there it was. The truth she'd been dancing around for 2 years. I wasn't unwelcome because of anything I'd done. I was unwelcome because of who I was. A black man who'd pulled himself up through honest work rather than inherited wealth. Someone whose presence reminded everyone that Marcus hadn't always moved in circles where the wine cost more than most people's rent. "Ashley, let me give you some education about sophistication. Sophisticated people don't exclude the man who raised the groom. Sophisticated people don't send bills to people they've banned from events. Sophisticated people understand that love isn't a brand to be managed." Her cheeks flushed. "Fine. You want to be stubborn about this? Marcus told me you'd be difficult. He said you never understood his ambitions." "Did he also tell you about the second mortgage I took to pay for his education? The truck I sold to cover his mother's medical bills? The 60-hour weeks I worked so he could afford to have ambitions? That's in the past. That's what love looks like. Not a photo shoot, not a guest list curated for maximum networking potential. Love is sacrifice without applause." She shoved the brochure back into her folder. "I came here to include you, to help you understand what we're trying to accomplish. But if you're going to be bitter about choices that don't revolve around you, then maybe it's better that you stay home. Maybe it is. Maybe it. But if I stay home, my money stays home too." Her eyes sharpened. "What does that mean?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the email from Robert confirming the escrow account setup. "It means every vendor on your list now has to get my written approval before they see a dime. It means your publicity campaign doesn't get funded. It means your drone footage gets shot with someone else's money." "You can't do that." "I just did. Marcus put my name on those vendor contracts as the primary financial contact. That gives me legal authority over what gets paid and what doesn't." Ashley's composure finally shattered completely. "You selfish old man. Do you have any idea what you're destroying? The connections we've made, the opportunities this represents. I'm not destroying anything. I'm setting boundaries. If you want to build your social climbing platform, you're welcome to do it. Just don't expect the man you've rejected to bankroll your ambitions. Marcus will never forgive you for this. Maybe, but he'll respect me. And right now, I'll take respect over forgiveness. She turned and walked back to her car, heels clicking against concrete like a countdown timer. As she drove away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. The satisfaction of a boundary clearly drawn and firmly held. My phone rang almost immediately, Marcus' voice tight with barely controlled frustration. "Dad, what did you say to Ashley? She's furious." I told her the truth, that love doesn't require a publicity campaign. She's trying to do something special for us. She's trying to do something special for her image. There's a difference, and the fact that you can't see it worries me more than anything else about this situation. Why are you making this so hard? We invited you to contribute to be part of something beautiful. You invited my wallet, you banned me. If you can't understand why that's a problem, then we have bigger issues than wedding planning. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, smaller. "Dad, I'm caught between you and Ashley. I love you both. Then act like it. Stop treating me like an ATM and start treating me like your father. What do you want from me? I want you to remember who you are. Not who Ashley thinks you should become, but who your mother and I raised you to be." Another silence. "I need to think." "Good. Thinking is what adults do before they make decisions." After he hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and looked at the copies of my financial declaration. One would go to every vendor on that list. Let them understand that the gravy train had conditions now, real ones with consequences. Damon called back that evening with more intelligence. "Mr. Washington, I talked to someone at Premier Catering. They're nervous about the timeline. Apparently the event is so elaborate they need an extra week of prep, but Harborview Estate won't give them exclusive access until payment is confirmed. If your escrow holds up their deposit, they might have to scale back the menu." "Good. Maybe my son will eat real food instead of architectural presentations." "There's something else. The Photographer Platinum events, they're not just shooting the wedding, they're creating content for Ashley's personal brand launch. She's planning to use the wedding photos for some kind of lifestyle blog she wants to start." I closed my eyes and felt a headache building. A lifestyle blog? Called Elevated Living or something like that. Ashley as the hostess with the mostest, showing other women how to live with style and grace. The wedding is basically going to be her portfolio. "Damon, can you do me a favor? Start documenting this. Photos, conversations, evidence of what this wedding has really become. I have a feeling I'm going to need proof that this was never about love." "Already on it, Mr. Washington. And sir, for what it's worth, Mrs. Washington would be proud of you for standing up for what matters." After we hung up, I walked to the mantel and picked up Ruth's picture. In the soft evening light, her smile looked almost knowing, as if she'd seen this day coming and trusted me to handle it right. "I'm trying, baby," I whispered to the photograph. "I'm trying to save our boy from becoming someone we wouldn't recognize." Outside, Charlotte settled into evening darkness. Inside, I prepared for the kind of fight that happens when love refuses to be bought and respect demands to be earned. The wedding was 5 weeks away, and every day Marcus delayed in choosing between his father's values and Ashley's ambitions, the more expensive his education was going to become. The war began on a Wednesday morning with coordinated attacks from multiple fronts. First came the phone call from Marcus, his voice carrying the carefully rehearsed tone of someone who'd been coached. "Dad, I've been thinking about our conversation. Maybe we can find some middle ground here." I poured my coffee and settled into the kitchen chair. "I'm listening." "What if we scaled back some of the extras, maybe skip the drone footage, reduce the floral arrangements? But we really need the full catering package and the photography. These are investments in our future." "Marcus, when did food become an investment? When did taking pictures become a business strategy?" "You don't understand the world I work in now. Image matters. The people who can advance my career will be at this wedding. First impressions count for everything." "And what impression do you want to make? That you're a man who borrows money he can't repay to impress people who don't really know him?" Silence. Then a defensive edge crept into his voice. "I can repay it. My promotion comes through next month and Ashley's getting a raise. We have it handled. What promotion? What raise, Marcus? You're counting chickens that might never hatch. Dad, just sign the papers, please. For me, for Mom's memory, for our family. The mention of Ruth hit like a slap. Don't you dare bring your mother into this. Ruth would be horrified by what you're doing. She believed in living within your means and treating people with respect, not excluding family members who don't fit your new image. Mom would want me to be successful. Mom would want you to be decent. There's a difference. An hour later, Ashley arrived unannounced. This time she didn't bother with pleasantries. James, we need to resolve this situation immediately. Vendors are calling with questions about payment schedules. This is becoming embarrassing. For who? For all of us. Do you want people thinking Marcus's family can't afford to support his wedding? I want people thinking Marcus's family has principles. If that embarrasses you, examine your values, not my bank account. She pulled out her phone and showed me a screen full of text messages. Look at this. The florist, the photographer, the venue coordinator. Everyone wants confirmation. You're creating chaos. I read the messages over her shoulder. Professional politeness barely masking growing anxiety. Payment confirmations requested. Timeline concerns expressed. The careful language of vendors who smell trouble but can't afford to lose clients. Ashley, this isn't chaos. This is accountability. Every business runs on cash flow and every vendor should know who's actually authorizing their checks. But you are authorizing them. The contracts have your name. My name was put on contracts I never signed. Big difference. Her composure cracked slightly. What exactly do you want? Money, more control. A bigger role in the planning. I want my son back. The one who called me every Sunday, who remembered my birthday, who didn't treat his father like an embarrassing secret. James, you're being dramatic. Nothing has changed between you and Marcus. Everything has changed. He used to value my opinion. Now he avoids my calls. He used to bring girlfriends to meet me. He hid you for 6 months. He used to talk about his future with excitement. Now he talks about it like a business plan. Ashley's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and frowned. That's Kevin Shaw, our wedding planner. He wants to meet with all of us this afternoon to discuss budget realities. Kevin Shaw. He's coordinating everything. Marcus found him through work connections. Very exclusive clientele. Something in her tone made my radar ping. How exclusive? He only takes referrals. Very discreet, very professional. He's handled weddings for some of Charlotte's most prominent families. After Ashley left, I called Damon immediately. I need you to research someone named Kevin Shaw. Wedding planner, exclusive clientele, works by referral only. On it. Give me an hour. Damon called back with information that made my blood run cold. Mr. Washington, Kevin Shaw isn't just a wedding planner. He's what they call a lifestyle facilitator. He helps people project images they can't actually afford by arranging short-term financing through private lenders. Private lenders. Think payday loans for rich people, high-interest short terms designed to bridge gaps between image and reality. Shaw takes a percentage of everything he arranges. My stomach dropped. Are you telling me Marcus borrowed money for this wedding? I'm telling you Shaw specializes in helping young professionals fake affluence until they can afford it for real. The problem is, most of them never can afford it for real. How much are we talking about? Based on the vendor list Ashley showed around town, probably 60 to 80,000, maybe more. I hung up and immediately called Robert Chen. Robert, I need you to run a credit check on Marcus, full report, recent activity, everything. James, I can't do that without his permission. Then call him and get his permission. Tell him his father needs to understand his financial situation before making any commitments. And if he refuses, then I'll know everything I need to know. Marcus called me back within an hour, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. Dad, why are you checking my credit? Don't you trust me? Marcus, trust has to be earned. Lately, you haven't been earning it. This is insulting. I'm a grown man with a good job and a bright future. Then you won't mind showing me your financial statements. Silence stretched between us. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was smaller, defeated. Dad, there might be some temporary cash flow issues. Define temporary. Kevin arranged a bridge loan to cover vendor deposits. It's standard practice for weddings this size. Everyone does it. How much? 75,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. Marcus, that's more than some people make in a year. It's an investment in our future. Ashley's family expects a certain standard. And what happens if your promotion doesn't come through? What happens if Ashley's raise gets delayed? What happens if the economy takes a downturn and you're stuck with debt you can't service? Dad, you're catastrophizing. Everything will work out. Famous last words of every person who ever went bankrupt. That afternoon, Kevin Shaw himself called to arrange a meeting. His voice carried the smooth confidence of someone who specialized in making expensive problems disappear. Mr. Washington, I understand there's been some confusion about vendor authorizations. I'd like to sit down and walk you through our payment structure. I'll meet with you, but I'm bringing my financial advisor. Of course. Transparency is essential in these arrangements. We met at Shaw's office in Charlotte's financial district. Everything about the space screamed expensive discretion. Leather furniture, mahogany paneling, abstract art that probably cost more than my car. Shaw himself was exactly what I'd expected, well-dressed, well-spoken, and completely comfortable with other people's money. Mr. Washington, thank you for coming. I wanted to assure you that your son's financing is completely above board. We specialize in helping young professionals bridge the gap between current income and future earning potential. At what interest rate? Shaw's smile never wavered. Our rates are competitive for the specialized services we provide. That's not an answer. Robert leaned forward. Mr. Shaw, what's the annual percentage rate on Marcus's loan? 18%. I nearly choked. 18%? Are you kidding me? Mr. Washington, this is a short-term facility, 6 months maximum. When Marcus's promotion comes through, he'll refinance through traditional channels. And if his promotion doesn't come through, Shaw's smile flickered slightly. We're very confident in Marcus's prospects. But if you're wrong, then we work out payment arrangements that protect everyone's interests. Robert and I exchanged glances. We both knew what that meant. Legal action, asset seizure, credit destruction. All the things that happened when young people confused dreams with guarantees. Mr. Shaw, I want to see the loan documents. I'm afraid those are confidential between us and Marcus. Then this meeting is over. I stood to leave, but Shaw raised a hand. Mr. Washington, perhaps we can reach an accommodation. If you were to guarantee a portion of Marcus's obligation, we could restructure the terms more favorably. You want me to co-sign my son's debt? Think of it as supporting his aspirations. I think of it as enabling his delusions. Robert and I walked out without another word. That evening, the vendor calls began in earnest. Premier Catering wanted payment confirmation. Harbor View Estate needed deposit verification. Platinum Events Photography required contract clarification. Each caller was polite but firm. Money needed to flow or services would stop. I gave each of them the same message. Submit your invoices to my escrow account. If I approve the charges, you'll be paid within 24 hours. If I don't approve them, find another funding source. By Friday, the pressure was building. Ashley called twice, Marcus called 3 times, and Kevin Shaw left 2 voicemails. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Pleading, reasoning, bargaining, and finally threats. Dad, you're sabotaging my wedding. I'm teaching you about consequences. Ashley's parents are asking questions. Her father wants to know if we can handle our financial obligations. We can with your help. That's not the same thing as being able to handle them. Friday evening, Damon called with disturbing news. Mr. Washington, I talked to someone at Harbor View Estate. They're getting nervous about the Washington-Richardson wedding. Payments are behind schedule and they're starting to make contingency plans. What kind of contingency plans? They have other events waiting for that date. If payments don't clear by next Wednesday, they might offer the slot to someone else. Good. Sir, let them offer it to someone else. Maybe Marcus will learn that real life operates on real deadlines. Saturday morning brought the most desperate call yet, Marcus' voice breaking with stress. Dad, please, I'm begging you, just this once, help me out. I swear I'll pay you back. Marcus, I've helped you out your entire life. College tuition, car payments, apartment deposits, medical bills when you didn't have insurance. When has it ever been just this once? This is different. How? Because if you don't help me now, I'll lose everything. Ashley, the wedding, my reputation at work. Everything. Maybe losing everything isn't the worst thing that could happen to you. Maybe it's the only thing that will teach you who you really are. The silence that followed was profound. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. I never thought my own father would abandon me. I'm not abandoning you. I'm refusing to rescue you from choices you made without consulting me. There's a difference. What am I supposed to do? Be honest with Ashley about your financial situation. Scale back your wedding to something you can actually afford. Stop trying to impress people who don't care about you enough to accept you as you are. And if Ashley leaves, then you'll know she was never the right woman for you. After that call, I sat in my kitchen and stared at Ruth's photograph for a long time. Tough love is the hardest kind to give because it requires you to watch someone you love suffer consequences you could prevent. But preventing those consequences would mean enabling the behavior that created them in the first place. The phone rang again. This time it was Kevin Shaw, and his smooth confidence had developed some rough edges. Mr. Washington, we need to discuss Marcus's situation immediately. Vendors are threatening to withdraw from the event. Then Marcus needs to make some decisions. With respect, sir, you're forcing those decisions through financial pressure. That's not fair to the young couple. Mr. Shaw, you loan my son money he can't repay for a wedding he can't afford to impress people who don't really know him. Don't lecture me about fairness. We're trying to help Marcus achieve his dreams. You're helping him buy a fantasy with borrowed money. When reality comes due, you'll be long gone with your fees, and he'll be left with the debt. Mr. Washington, perhaps we could arrange a payment plan that works for everyone. Here's my payment plan. Marcus cancels the loan scales, back the wedding, and learns to live within his means. You find another victim. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer. Tom, I need you to draft a letter stating that I have no financial responsibility for any debts incurred by my son without my written authorization. James, what's going on? My son is learning the difference between what he wants and what he can afford. I want to make sure his education doesn't become my obligation. The war was escalating and battle lines were being drawn. On one side stood Marcus Ashley and Kevin Shaw, committed to a vision of success that required borrowed money and excluded inconvenient family members. On the other side stood me, armed with nothing but principles and the financial discipline to enforce them. The wedding was 4 weeks away and something had to give. I just hoped that when it did, my son would land on solid ground instead of the house of cards he'd been building. Monday morning arrived with the kind of phone call that tells you a situation has moved from complicated to critical. Kevin Shaw's voice had lost all pretense of smooth professionalism. Mr. Washington, we have a serious problem. Harborview Estate is threatening to cancel the venue reservation unless they receive full payment by Wednesday. That's 48 hours. Then you better figure out where to find $48,000. Sir, with respect, this affects your son's reputation as much as his finances. When word gets out that the Washington-Richardson wedding was canceled for non-payment, it will follow Marcus for years. I set down my coffee cup carefully. Mr. Shaw, are you threatening me? I'm explaining consequences. Charlotte's social circles are smaller than you might think. People talk. Let them talk. Maybe they'll mention that Marcus tried to live beyond his means and his father refused to enable the fantasy. Mr. Washington, I've worked with dozens of families in similar situations. There's always a way to work things out that preserves everyone's dignity. Whose dignity are we preserving? Yours, Ashley's. Because Marcus lost his dignity the moment he borrowed money he couldn't repay to impress people who don't actually care about him. Shaw's voice hardened. I'm trying to help your son here. No, you're trying to protect your commission. Big difference. I hung up and immediately called Damon. How fast can you get to Harborview Estate? 20 minutes. Why? I want eyes on the ground. If they're really preparing to cancel, there will be signs, staff meetings, alternative booking calls, that kind of thing. On my way. An hour later, Damon called back with confirmation. Mr. Washington, it's real. The events coordinator was on the phone with another client when I walked past her office. I heard her say the October 28th slot might be opening up due to payment issues. Good. Let Marcus learn what contracts actually mean. At noon, Ashley called in full panic mode. James, Kevin says you're refusing to guarantee the venue payment. Do you understand what this means? It means actions have consequences. It means social suicide. Do you know who's supposed to be at this wedding? Partners from Marcus's firm, clients. Ashley's been cultivating people who can make or break careers. If we have to send cancellation notices, we'll be laughingstock. Ashley, let me ask you something. If these people are really Marcus's friends and colleagues, wouldn't they understand financial constraints? Wouldn't they respect him for making responsible choices? That's not how the world works. That's not how your world works. There's a difference. Her voice cracked slightly. James, you're destroying everything we've built. What you've built is a house of cards. I'm just refusing to hold it up with borrowed money. Marcus will never forgive you. Maybe, but he'll survive, and maybe he'll even thank me someday. Tuesday brought the confrontation I'd been both dreading and anticipating. Marcus called and asked to meet at Meridian Park, the place where Ruth and I used to take him to feed ducks when he was small. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. He was already there when I arrived, sitting on the same bench where Ruth used to read him stories. He looked older than his 32 years, worn down by stress and impossible choices. Dad, we need to fix this. I sat beside him but didn't speak immediately. Sometimes silence creates space for truth. Kevin says the venue is gone unless we pay by tomorrow. Ashley's been crying for 2 days. Her mother called this morning asking if we need financial help, which was humiliating beyond description. What did you tell her? That we had it handled. But we don't have anything handled. Marcus, when did you stop telling me the truth? He looked at the pond where ducks moved in lazy circles. When I started being ashamed of it. Ashamed of what? Of needing help. Of not being as successful as I pretended to be. Of dating a woman whose family has more money than mine ever will. And you thought borrowing money would solve that? I thought it would buy me time to catch up. Catch up to what? An image, a lifestyle, Marcus, you're chasing, something that doesn't exist. We sat in silence for several minutes. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was barely audible. I love her, Dad. I know you don't understand why, but I do. I understand loving someone. What I don't understand is sacrificing yourself to make them happy. She's not asking me to sacrifice myself. Isn't she? She asked you to exclude your father from your wedding. She asked you to borrow money you can't repay. She asked you to pretend to be someone you're not. What part of yourself is left? Marcus put his head in his hands. I don't know anymore. Then maybe it's time to find out. That evening, the final assault began. Ashley called first, then Marcus, then Kevin Shaw again. Each conversation followed the same desperate pattern: pleading, bargaining, threatening, and finally attacking. You're a bitter old man who can't stand to see his son succeed. You're sabotaging Marcus out of jealousy. You're proving that Ashley was right about your character. I listened to each accusation without defending myself. Sometimes the truth speaks loudest when you don't argue with lies. Wednesday morning brought the call I'd been expecting. Harborview Estate, polite but firm. Mr. Washington, this is Patricia from Harborview Events. I'm calling to confirm that we'll need to release the October 28th date to our waiting list unless payment is received by 5 p.m. today. I understand completely. Business is business. Will the payment be forthcoming? Not from me. I see. Should I inform the wedding party? That's your decision. My son made financial commitments without securing funding. The consequences belong to him. At 3 p.m., Marcus called sobbing. Dad, they canceled the venue. Ashley's locked herself in the bedroom and won't come out. Her parents are driving down from Richmond. This is a disaster. Marcus, this isn't a disaster. This is reality arriving right on schedule. How can you be so calm about this? Because I've been expecting it. You can't build dreams on borrowed money and expect them to stand. What am I supposed to do now? Make different choices, better choices. Like what? Cancel the loan before the interest destroys your credit. Plan a wedding you can actually afford. Marry Ashley if you love her, not because she comes with a social network. And if she won't marry me without the big wedding, then you'll know what she really loved about the relationship. Thursday brought news I hadn't anticipated. Damon called with information that changed the entire dynamic. Mr. Washington, I found something interesting. Ashley's been meeting with a real estate agent. For what? Condos. Expensive ones. Downtown high-rises with city views. Apparently she's been looking at places that cost twice what Marcus makes in a year. My stomach dropped. Are you sure? I have photos of her going into Pinnacle Properties yesterday. My cousin works there as a loan officer. Ashley's been pre-approved for a mortgage that assumes a household income of $300,000 a year. Marcus doesn't make anywhere near that. No, but Marcus plus a wealthy father-in-law might. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Ashley hadn't just been planning a wedding. She'd been planning a lifestyle upgrade funded by my money. The wedding was never about love. It was a down payment on a future I was expected to subsidize. I called Marcus immediately. Son, We need to talk, in person, right now. Dad, I can't deal with another lecture about financial responsibility. This isn't about financial responsibility. This is about Ashley's real plans for your marriage. Something in my voice must have convinced him because he agreed to come over immediately. When Marcus arrived, I showed him the photos Damon had taken. Ashley walking into Pinnacle Properties. Ashley shaking hands with a real estate agent. Ashley looking at condos that cost more than most people's houses. I don't understand, Marcus said, but his voice suggested he was beginning to. Your fiancée has been shopping for a lifestyle she expects me to fund. The wedding isn't the end of her financial expectations. It's the beginning. Marcus stared at the photos for a long time. When he looked up, his eyes held a pain I'd never seen before. You think she's been planning this from the beginning? I think Ashley saw a successful young man with family money and made strategic choices accordingly. That's a horrible thing to say about someone. It's a horrible thing to do to someone. Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out at the small garden Ruth had planted and I still maintained. When he turned around, his face showed the kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying weight you finally realize isn't yours. Dad, what if you're right? What if everything I thought was real was just manipulation? Then you'll have learned one of life's most important lessons before it was too late to apply it. And if you're wrong, then Ashley will prove me wrong by standing by you even when the money runs out. Friday brought the test neither of us wanted, but both of us needed. Marcus called Ashley and told her the truth. The venue was canceled. The loan was being canceled. The wedding would have to be scaled back dramatically or postponed indefinitely. According to Marcus, Ashley's response was swift and revealing. She didn't ask how I was handling the stress. She didn't offer to help figure out alternatives. Her first question was whether your escrow account could still be accessed for a smaller venue. And when you said no, she said maybe we should postpone everything until we could do it right, by which she meant expensive. What did you tell her? I told her that if she loved me, the size of the wedding shouldn't matter. If she wanted to be my wife, we could get married at City Hall with 2 witnesses, and it would be just as meaningful. And she said that showed I didn't understand what marriage represents in terms of social positioning. The final blow came Saturday morning. Marcus arrived at my house carrying a manila envelope and looking like someone who'd been awake all night making hard decisions. Dad, I need you to see something. Inside the envelope were the original seating charts for the canceled wedding. Marcus had found them in Ashley's desk while looking for vendor contact information. I'd seen guest lists before, but this one was different. It wasn't just names and table assignments, it was a strategic networking diagram. Table 1, Ashley's parents and their country club friends. Table 2, partners from Marcus's law firm and their wives. Table 3, local business leaders Ashley wanted to cultivate. Each table had been carefully curated for maximum social and professional benefit. Table 7, marked family obligations, had exactly 4 seats. Marcus's aunt and uncle from Durham, a cousin he barely knew, and in small print at the bottom a note that made my blood freeze. Father seat TBD pending contribution resolution. Even at their own wedding, Ashley had treated my presence as contingent on my financial compliance. Marcus, I said quietly, look at table 7. When he saw it, his face went through a series of expressions. Confusion, recognition, and finally a kind of devastated clarity. She was never going to let you come unless you paid, was she? Apparently not. Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to yourself for accepting this treatment. Marcus folded the seating chart carefully and put it back in the envelope. When he looked at me again, I saw something I hadn't seen in 2 years. My son, the real one without the mask Ashley had helped him create. Dad, what do I do now? You decide who you want to be. With or without Ashley. With or without the debt. With or without the image she's been selling you. It's going to hurt. Growing up always does, but the alternative is staying a child forever, and children can't sustain marriages. Marcus left that afternoon to have what he called the most important conversation of my life with Ashley. I didn't hear from him for 3 days. When he finally called, his voice sounded different, lighter somehow despite everything that had fallen apart. Dad, Ashley and I are taking a break. She's moving back to Richmond to think things through. The wedding is officially postponed indefinitely. How are you feeling about that? Relieved, scared, grateful? like I can breathe again for the first time in months. And the debt, Kevin's restructuring it into a personal loan with more reasonable terms. It'll take me 2 years to pay off, but I'll manage it without putting anyone else at risk. Marcus, I'm proud of you. For what? Making a mess of everything. For cleaning up the mess before it became permanent. The tension that had been building for months finally began to release. Marcus was learning the difference between love and transactions, between support and enablement, between family and business relationships. The lessons were expensive, but they were also invaluable. As I sat in my kitchen that evening looking at Ruth's photograph, I felt something I hadn't experienced since this whole ordeal began: peace. Not because everything was resolved, but because truth was finally being spoken, and choices were finally being made based on reality rather than fantasy. The wedding might have been canceled, but my son was coming back to himself. And that was worth more than any event Ashley could have planned. The calm after Marcus's decision to postpone the wedding lasted exactly 48 hours. Then Damon called with information that turned my relief into something much darker. Mr. Washington, you need to know something about Ashley. That LLC I mentioned, I got access to the business filings. Richardson Lifestyle Enterprises. Filed 6 months ago, right after the engagement announcement. I set down my morning coffee. What kind of business? On paper, it's a lifestyle consulting company, but the financial activity tells a different story. Large deposits from unknown sources, payments to high-end retailers, transfers that don't match any legitimate business model. Damon, speak plainly. What are you telling me? I think Ashley's been running money through this company to hide purchases from Marcus. Expensive ones. Jewelry, furniture, designer clothes. All paid for by Richardson Lifestyle Enterprises. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Ashley hadn't just been planning an expensive wedding, she'd been funding an expensive life hidden from the man she claimed to love. How much money are we talking about? Based on what I can see in public records, at least $40,000 in the past 6 months, maybe more. Where's that money coming from? That's what I can't figure out. The deposits are irregular, different amounts, different timing. It's not salary, not family money, something else. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer, Tom Harrison. Tom, I need you to run a business check on Richardson Lifestyle Enterprises. Full corporate filing, ownership structure, financial activity if you can access it legally. James, what's going on? Last week you were worried about wedding debt, now you're investigating corporations. I'm starting to think the wedding debt was just the tip of a very large iceberg. And Tom called back 3 hours later with information that made me question everything I thought I knew about Ashley. James Richardson Lifestyle Enterprises is registered as a sole proprietorship under Ashley Richardson's Social Security number. But the interesting part is the registered address, which is a mailbox service in South Charlotte, professional address rental, the kind people use when they don't want their real address on public documents. What does that suggest to you? That whatever Ashley's doing with this company, she doesn't want it easily traced back to her personal life. That afternoon, I made a decision that felt both necessary and intrusive. I called Marcus and asked him to come over for a conversation that would change everything. Dad, you sounded urgent on the phone. What's wrong? I showed him the corporate filing documents Tom had obtained. Ashley's name, the mysterious address, the business classification as lifestyle consulting. Marcus, did you know Ashley started a company 6 months ago? His face went blank. What company? Richardson Lifestyle Enterprises. She filed it right after your engagement. Marcus stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. Dad, Ashley doesn't have a company. She works for the nonprofit. That's her only job. According to these records, she's been running a business that's processed at least $40,000 in transactions since January. That's impossible. I handle our joint finances. I would know if she had that kind of money moving around. Joint finances. We opened a joint savings account for wedding expenses. I put in my bonus money, she contributes from her salary. Everything's been transparent. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October weather. Marcus, when's the last time you actually looked at your joint account statements? I don't know. Ashley handles the day-to-day monitoring. She's better with details. Get online. Check the account right now. Marcus pulled out his phone and logged into his banking app. I watched his face change as he scrolled through transaction history. Dad, there are withdrawals here I don't recognize. Large ones. $5,000 in August, $8,000 in September. All authorized by Ashley. For what? The descriptions just say wedding expenses, but I never authorized transfers this large. Marcus, How much money was supposed to be in that account? $25,000. My bonus, plus Ashley's contributions over 6 months. Marcus's hands shook slightly as he checked the current balance. Dad, there's only $3,000 left. The silence in my kitchen was profound. Outside, ordinary life continued. Cars passed, dogs barked, neighbors went about their business. Inside, my son was discovering that the woman he planned to marry had been systematically draining their shared resources for purposes she'd never disclosed. Marcus, I think we need to understand where that money went. This has to be a mistake. Ashley couldn't. Some people do things we never think they're capable of when they want something badly enough. Marcus spent the next hour on the phone with his bank requesting detailed transaction records. What he learned painted a picture of financial deception that went far beyond wedding planning. Dad, the money went to cash withdrawals and wire transfers. The withdrawals happened at ATMs all over Charlotte. The wire transfers went to Richardson Lifestyle Enterprises. Ashley was transferring your joint money to her private business account. But why? What was she buying that she couldn't tell me about? Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Damon, and his voice carried an excitement that suggested he'd found something significant. Mr. Washington, I know where Ashley's money went. A friend of mine works at Cartier downtown. Ashley's been a regular customer for months. Jewelry, watches, designer accessories, always paying cash. How much? My friend estimates at least $30,000 since spring, all purchased under the name Richardson Lifestyle Enterprises for what Ashley called business development purposes. I looked at Marcus, who had gone pale listening to my side of the conversation. Damon, anything else? Yeah. Ashley's also been shopping at designer furniture stores, not wedding registry stuff. High-end pieces for what she told salespeople was her consulting office, another $15,000 minimum. When I hung up, Marcus was staring at his phone screen like it might offer some explanation that made sense. Dad, Ashley's been lying to me for months, maybe longer. Everything about our finances, about her business, about what she's been doing with our money. Marcus, I'm sorry. I know this is painful. I feel like an idiot. How did I not see this? Because you trusted someone you loved. That's not idiocy, that's faith. Ashley chose to betray that faith. Just then, my phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize, but the voice was familiar. Kevin Shaw, and he sounded desperate. Mr. Washington, we have a serious situation. Several vendors are threatening legal action over unpaid deposits. That's Marcus's problem, not mine. Sir, your name is on the vendor contracts as the financial guarantor. Legally, you may be liable for outstanding debts. My blood pressure spiked. I never signed any guarantor agreements. The wedding planner contract includes a clause stating that the primary family contact assumes financial responsibility for vendor obligations. I looked at Marcus, who was listening to my side of the conversation with growing alarm. Mr. Shaw, send me copies of every document that allegedly bears my signature. I want to see exactly what I'm supposed to have agreed to. Mr. Washington, we need to resolve this quickly. Premier Catering is threatening to file a lien. Harborview Estate is demanding immediate payment for cancellation fees, and Platinum Events Photography wants compensation for lost bookings. How much are we talking about? Approximately $35,000 in cancellation fees and deposit forfeitures. After I hung up, Marcus and I sat in stunned silence. The wedding that was supposed to cost $190,000 was going to cost money, even though it wasn't happening. Dad, I'm ruined. The joint account is empty. Ashley's been stealing our money, and now vendors want $35,000 in cancellation fees. Marcus, take a breath. Let's solve one problem at a time. I called Tom Harrison immediately. Tom, I need you to review some vendor contracts. Kevin Shaw claims I'm financially liable for wedding debts, but I never signed any guarantor agreements. James, email me everything you have. I'll review it tonight and call you first thing tomorrow. That evening, as Marcus sat at my kitchen table going through bank statements and trying to piece together the scope of Ashley's deception, I found myself thinking about patterns. Ruth used to say that people's true character emerged under pressure. Crisis revealed who someone really was beneath their public persona. Ashley's crisis response had been to lie, steal, and manipulate. She'd hidden a business, drained shared accounts, and left Marcus exposed to legal liability while positioning herself as the victim of my financial constraints. Marcus's crisis response had been different. Painful honesty, genuine remorse, and a willingness to face consequences. He was learning, growing, becoming the man Ruth and I had tried to raise. Dad, Marcus said without looking up from the bank statements, I owe you an apology that's bigger than words can carry. For what? for choosing Ashley's version of success over your values, for excluding you from my wedding while expecting you to pay for it, for believing that love could be purchased and that family was disposable. Marcus, you don't owe me an apology. You owe yourself a promise to never let anyone treat you this way again. What if I can't trust my own judgment anymore? What if I'm just bad at recognizing who people really are? Then you'll get better at it. Experience is expensive, but it's also educational. The next morning, Tom called with news that shifted the entire legal landscape. James, I've reviewed every document Kevin Shaw sent. You're not liable for vendor debts. The language in the wedding planner contract is deliberately confusing, designed to make people think they're guarantors when they're not. So the vendors can't come after me. They can try, but they have no legal standing. The debts belong to whoever actually contracted for services. That's Marcus and Ashley. What about the financial guarantor language Shaw mentioned? Pure intimidation. Shaw's hoping you don't know the difference between being listed as a contact and being liable for payment. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by anger at Shaw's deceptive tactics. Tom, can we go after Shaw for attempted fraud? We could, but it might not be worth the effort. The real issue is whether Marcus can be held liable for the full amount when Ashley was a co-contractor. That afternoon, I made a decision that surprised even me. I called Ashley directly. James, why are you calling me? Because my son deserves to know who he was planning to marry. I don't know what you mean. Richardson Lifestyle Enterprises, $30,000 in undisclosed jewelry purchases. $22,000 transferred from Marcus's joint account without his knowledge. Should I continue? The silence stretched so long I thought she might have hung up. Ashley, are you there? How did you find out about that? Does it matter? What matters is that you've been living a double life funded by money you stole from the man who trusted you. I didn't steal anything. That money was for our future together. Jewelry and designer furniture were for your future together. You wouldn't understand. Image matters in my world. Marcus needed to see that I could elevate his status. By bankrupting him. By showing him what success looks like. The conversation ended there because I realized I was talking to someone who lived in a completely different moral universe. Ashley genuinely believed that deception in service of image was not only acceptable, but necessary. That evening, Marcus made a decision that marked his transition from victim to survivor. Dad, I'm calling Kevin Shaw tomorrow to cancel the remaining vendor contracts and negotiate payment plans for legitimate cancellation fees. I'm closing the joint account Ashley had access to, and I'm filing a police report about the unauthorized transfers. Are you sure about the police report? I'm sure about wanting this to end cleanly. Ashley needs to face consequences and I need to stop enabling her choices. Marcus, I'm proud of you. Don't be proud yet. I've got 2 years of debt to pay off and a lot of rebuilding to do, but at least now I'm building on solid ground. The revelations had cascaded exactly as they needed to. Ashley's house of lies had collapsed. Marcus's eyes had been opened and the vendor threats had been revealed as empty intimidation. What remained was the hard work of rebuilding a life based on truth instead of fantasy. As I sat in my kitchen that night looking at Ruth's photograph, I felt a satisfaction that had nothing to do with being right and everything to do with watching my son choose integrity over image. The lessons had been expensive, but they were worth every penny. 3 weeks after Ashley's financial deceptions came to light, I received a call that changed everything again. It was Marcus, and his voice carried a mixture of exhaustion and determination I'd never heard before. Dad, Ashley's back from Richmond. She wants to go through with the wedding. I set down my morning paper. What wedding? You canceled everything. She says she's secured new funding. Her parents agreed to cover the costs if we scale back to something more manageable. She's booked a smaller venue for this Saturday. And you said... I said I needed to think about it. Dad, she's acting like none of the financial stuff happened. Like we can just pretend the lies and the hidden accounts were some kind of misunderstanding. What do you want to do? I want to see who she really is when the pressure's on. If she's changed, or if she's just better at hiding things. Marcus, that's a dangerous game. Maybe. But I need to know for sure before I can move on with my life. That afternoon, Ashley called me directly. Her voice carried a forced brightness that sounded like someone trying to sell insurance. James, I wanted to personally invite you to our wedding this Saturday. I know there have been misunderstandings, but Marcus and I are committed to starting fresh. What wedding? I thought everything was canceled. We found a lovely venue in Davidson, much more intimate, much more appropriate for our actual budget, just family and close friends. And where exactly do I fit in this new plan? You're Marcus's father. Of course you're included. Something in her tone made my radar ping. Ashley, let me ask you directly. Do you want me at this wedding? A pause that lasted just a heartbeat too long. James' family is important to both of us. That's not an answer to my question. Of course we want you there. After she hung up, I called Damon immediately. I need you to check out a venue in Davidson, something Ashley booked for this Saturday. On it. What's your instinct telling you? That Ashley's still playing games just with different rules. Damon called back 2 hours later with information that confirmed my suspicions. Mr. Washington, there's no wedding venue booked in Davidson for this Saturday. I called every event space in town. Nothing under Richardson, Washington, or any combination. Are you sure? Positive. Either Ashley's lying about the venue, or she's planning something that isn't actually a wedding. That evening, Marcus came to my house looking more conflicted than I'd ever seen him. Dad, something's not right. Ashley keeps changing details about Saturday. First it was a garden ceremony, then it was indoors. Now she's saying it might be at her parents' house in Richmond. Marcus, has Ashley shown you any contracts for this wedding, vendor agreements, venue confirmations, anything in writing? She says her parents are handling everything directly with vendors. She doesn't want me to worry about details. Son, that should worry you more, not less. Friday evening brought the call I'd been dreading. Ashley, and this time the mask was completely off. James, there's been a change of plans for tomorrow. What kind of change? We've decided to have a private ceremony. Just Marcus and me, my parents and the officiant. Very intimate, very meaningful. And Marcus knows about this. He's fine with it. He understands that after everything that's happened, we need to focus on what's really important. Which is our commitment to each other without outside distractions. Outside distractions. Is that what you call his father? James, you've made your feelings about our relationship very clear. We don't want any negativity on our special day. I hung up and immediately called Marcus. He answered on the first ring. Dad, Ashley just told me you can't make it tomorrow because you're not feeling well. That's interesting because Ashley just told me you decided you wanted a private ceremony without family. The silence that followed was profound. Marcus, are you there? She lied to both of us. Yes, she did. Dad, what should I do? Whatever you do, do it with your eyes open. Saturday morning, I made a decision that felt both risky and necessary. I drove to Davidson to find whatever Ashley had actually planned. If there was a wedding, I was going to attend. If there wasn't, I was going to find out what game she was really playing. The venue turned out to be Riverside Gardens, a small event space I hadn't thought to check because it was technically in Cornelius, not Davidson. I found it by following a trail of white balloons and Ashley's social media posts. I parked across the street and watched through my car window as vendors arrived. A small catering truck, a florist van, a photographer who definitely wasn't the expensive Platinum Events crew Ashley had originally hired. This was exactly what she'd claimed. It wasn't a budget wedding thrown together at the last minute. At 10:30, I saw Marcus arrive looking like a man walking to his execution. He stood in the parking lot for 5 full minutes before finally going inside. I waited another 10 minutes, then made my choice. I walked across the street and through the front door of Riverside Gardens like I belonged there. The space was simple but nice. White chairs arranged in short rows, basic floral arrangements, a small arch where vows would presumably be exchanged. Maybe 40 people total, none of whom I recognized except for Ashley's parents. Ashley stood near the entrance, greeting guests, wearing a white dress that was beautiful, but clearly not the designer gown she'd originally planned. When she saw me, her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, anger, calculation, and finally forced politeness. James, what a lovely surprise. I thought you weren't feeling well. I'm feeling fine. Looking forward to celebrating my son's wedding. I'm not sure we have a seat for you. The guest list was finalized based on your regrets. Then I'll stand. Ashley's mother appeared at her elbow, a woman who'd clearly spent her life managing social situations through charm and subtle intimidation. Mr. Washington, how nice to see you, though I do think there might be some confusion about today's arrangements. No confusion on my end. My son is getting married and I'm here to witness it. Of course, but this is a very intimate gathering. We've carefully planned for a specific number of guests. Then you should have planned for the groom's father. Ashley's father joined the conversation, a man whose handshake suggested he was used to resolving problems through quiet authority. Mr. Washington, perhaps we could step outside and discuss this reasonably. I am being reasonable. I'm a man attending his son's wedding. Sir, we've arranged this event based on certain understandings about family participation. What understandings? That I didn't deserve an invitation to my own son's wedding. The conversation was attracting attention from other guests who were beginning to stare at the growing confrontation near the entrance. Ashley's face had gone red with embarrassment and anger. James, you're creating a scene. I'm stating facts. You lied to Marcus about me declining to attend. You lied to me about him wanting a private ceremony. Now you want me to leave quietly so no one asks uncomfortable questions about why the groom's father wasn't invited. That's when Marcus appeared, drawn by the raised voices and the cluster of people near the door. When he saw me, his face showed relief, confusion, and something that might have been gratitude. Dad, what are you doing here? I'm here for your wedding son. But Ashley said you couldn't make it. Ashley said a lot of things that weren't true. Marcus looked from me to Ashley to her parents, pieces clicking together in real time. Ashley, did you tell my dad he wasn't invited? Marcus, we discussed this. We wanted intimacy, not complications. We never discussed excluding my father. You said yourself that he'd been difficult about the finances. Being careful with money isn't the same as being difficult, and it's definitely not grounds for excluding him from his son's wedding. Ashley's composure finally cracked completely. Marcus, you have to choose. Either we do this my way with the people who support our relationship, or we don't do it at all. The silence that followed was electric. Every person in that room understood they were witnessing a moment that would define the rest of Marcus's life. When Marcus spoke, his voice was clear and firm. Ashley, he's my father. If you can't accept him, you can't accept me. Don't be ridiculous. This isn't about accepting anyone. This is about maintaining standards. Whose standards? Our standards. The standards of the life we're trying to build together. A life that excludes my family isn't a life I want to build. Ashley's mask didn't just slip. At that point, it disintegrated entirely. Your family is embarrassing, Marcus. Your father is a maintenance worker who doesn't understand how the world actually works. My friends are doctors and lawyers and business executives. They expect a certain level of sophistication. My father is a retired electrical engineer who put me through college. He's the most decent man I know. Decent doesn't get you invited to the right parties or introduced to the right people. Then maybe we're going to the wrong parties and meeting the wrong people. I watched my son have the conversation I'd been hoping he'd have for 2 years. Not with me, but with himself. About what mattered, what was real, what was worth preserving, and what needed to be discarded. Ashley made one last desperate attempt to regain control. Marcus, if you humiliate me in front of my family and friends, there's no coming back from this. Good, Marcus said quietly, because I don't want to come back to this. He turned to the assembled guests and spoke in a voice that carried to every corner of the room. Thank you all for coming today. I'm sorry to announce that there won't be a wedding. Ashley and I have some fundamental differences about what marriage means, and it's better to address those now than after we've made vows we can't keep. The silence was profound. Ashley's mother made a small sound that might have been a gasp or a sob. Her father looked like a man calculating the social cost of a very public family failure. Ashley herself stood frozen for a moment, then found her voice for one final attack. You'll regret this, Marcus. You're throwing away everything we built together for a man who couldn't even afford to pay for your wedding. No, Marcus said calmly. I'm throwing away a fantasy for a relationship with someone who actually loves me. He walked over to me and extended his hand. Dad, would you like to get some lunch? I'm suddenly free for the rest of the day. As we walked toward the exit, I heard Ashley behind us explaining to her guests that the wedding was postponed due to a family emergency. Even in defeat, she was managing the narrative. In the parking lot, Marcus stopped and looked back at Riverside Gardens, where people were beginning to file out, looking confused and disappointed. Dad, did I just make the biggest mistake of my life? Marcus, you just made the smartest decision of your life. It doesn't feel smart. It feels terrifying. Growing up usually does. We drove to a diner in Charlotte where the coffee was honest and the waitresses called everyone honey. Marcus ordered eggs and bacon like a man who hadn't eaten in days. I ordered the same and watched my son slowly relax into his own skin. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "How did you know Ashley wasn't right for me?" "Because she wanted you to be ashamed of where you came from. People who love you don't ask you to forget your family." "What if I never find someone who loves me for who I actually am?" "Then you'll be alone, which is infinitely better than being with someone who loves an image they've created." Marcus ate his breakfast slowly, like a man savoring freedom. Outside, Charlotte went about its Saturday business, completely unaware that my son had just chosen integrity over acceptance, family over status, truth over performance. The wedding that was supposed to cost $190,000 had ended up costing exactly the price of 2 breakfast platters and the courage to say no to people who mistake money for love. It was the best investment either of us had ever made. The fallout from the canceled wedding began immediately. By Sunday morning, my phone was ringing with calls from people I'd never met who somehow had opinions about my son's personal life. Ashley's social media had exploded with cryptic posts about family interference and toxic relationships, painting herself as the victim of circumstances beyond her control. Marcus spent that Sunday at my house helping me work in Ruth's garden while we processed what had happened. His hands moved automatically through familiar tasks, pulling weeds and deadheading flowers, while his mind worked through 2 years of decisions he was finally questioning. "Dad, Ashley's telling people you threatened to disown me if I married her." I looked up from the tomato plants Ruth had loved. "What are you telling people?" "The truth. That I realized I was about to marry someone who wanted me to be ashamed of my family." "How's that being received?" "Mixed reactions. Some people think I'm crazy for walking away from someone like Ashley. Others are saying they never understood what I saw in her anyway." "What do you think?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his hands still busy with garden work. "I think I spent 2 years trying to become someone I thought was better than who I actually am, and I nearly lost myself in the process." Monday brought news that shifted the entire narrative. Damon called with information that put Ashley's recent behavior in a new and troubling context. "Mr. Washington, I found out why Ashley was so desperate to go through with some kind of wedding ceremony yesterday." "Tell me." She'd already sold the exclusive story to Charlotte Lifestyle magazine. From modest beginnings to high society, a modern love story. The article was supposed to run this month with photos from the wedding. I sat down heavily. She was going to monetize their marriage. Gets worse. The magazine paid her a $5,000 advance, which explains some of the money that disappeared from the business account. Ashley wasn't just planning a wedding, she was planning a media launch for her personal brand. "Does Marcus know?" "Not yet. I thought you should tell him." When Marcus came over that evening, I showed him the email Damon had forwarded from Charlotte Lifestyle magazine. A cheerful note from an editor asking when they could expect the wedding photos and final interview for their upcoming feature story. Marcus read it twice, his face cycling through disbelief, anger, and finally a kind of sad resignation. She was going to sell our love story. Apparently so. "Dad, how did I not see this? How did I miss that everything about our relationship was being packaged for public consumption? Because you loved someone, and love makes people hopeful. You kept looking for the woman you thought Ashley could become instead of accepting who she actually was. What kind of person sells their wedding to a magazine without telling their fiancé? The kind of person who sees relationships as business opportunities." Tuesday brought Ashley herself appearing at my front door without warning or invitation. She looked different, smaller somehow, as if the events of the weekend had deflated something inside her. "James, we need to talk." "We really don't." "Please, just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I led her into my kitchen. She sat at the same table where Marcus had made his decision to cancel the loan, where we discovered her financial deceptions, where truth had finally been spoken after months of lies. "I want to explain what happened Saturday." "Ashley, what happened Saturday was clarity. Nothing needs explaining." "You don't understand the pressure I was under. My parents, my friends, everyone had expectations about this wedding. I couldn't just cancel everything without losing face." "So you planned a fake wedding and excluded the groom's father to save face." "It wasn't fake. I love Marcus." "You love the idea of Marcus." the successful young professional who could elevate your social status. You never loved the actual man who came with a maintenance worker father and modest family background. Ashley's composure cracked slightly. That's not fair. What's not fair is expecting someone to abandon their family for your approval. James Marcus has potential, real potential. But he needs guidance, refinement. He needs someone who understands how success actually works. Success at what cost? His integrity, his relationships, his sense of self. You're being dramatic. Am I Ashley? You stole money from your shared account, lied about your business activities, excluded his father from his wedding, and sold your love story to a magazine without his knowledge. If that's what success looks like, Marcus is better off failing. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands folded on my kitchen table. What am I supposed to do now? Everyone knows the wedding was canceled. My reputation is ruined. Your reputation was built on lies. Maybe it's time to build something real. Easy for you to say. You don't understand what my world is like. You're right. I don't understand a world where love is a marketing opportunity and family is disposable. And I'm grateful Marcus escaped before he learned to understand it too. Ashley left without another word and I never saw her again. But Marcus told me later that she'd called him several times, each conversation following the same pattern. Apologies that blamed circumstances, promises to change that came with conditions, and finally threats about what her family could do to his career. Marcus handled each call the same way, with polite firmness and an increasingly clear understanding of who Ashley really was versus who he'd wanted her to be. Wednesday brought an unexpected visitor. Kevin Shaw appeared at my door looking haggard and desperate. Mr. Washington, I need to discuss Marcus's financial obligations. Marcus doesn't have financial obligations to you. Sir, there are vendor contracts that remain unfulfilled, cancellation fees that were triggered by Saturday's events. Then Ashley can pay them. She contracted for the services. Ashley's parents are refusing to cover costs they say were unauthorized. Sounds like a problem between you and Ashley. Shaw's professional veneer finally cracked completely. Mr. Washington, if these debts don't get paid, my business will be destroyed. I've been covering vendor payments out of my own pocket, hoping the wedding would proceed. Mr. Shaw, you built a business model on enabling people to live beyond their means. Now you're learning what happens when reality arrives. I was trying to help young couples achieve their dreams. You were helping them purchase fantasies with borrowed money. There's a difference. Shaw left, looking like a man who'd finally understood that other people's dreams don't pay your bills when they wake up. Thursday evening, Marcus and I had the conversation I'd been hoping for since this whole ordeal began. Not about Ashley, not about money, not about weddings, but about what kind of man he wanted to be going forward. Dad, I've been thinking about what you said, about choosing who I want to be. And I want to be someone Mom would be proud of, someone who treats people with dignity, who keeps his word, who doesn't pretend to be more than he is. You already are that person, you just forgot for a while. How do I make sure I don't forget again? By remembering that the people who love you don't want you to change. They want you to be the best version of yourself. Friday brought closure from an unexpected source. Charlotte Lifestyle magazine called to inform me that they were canceling their planned feature story about Marcus and Ashley. The narrative has become too complicated, the editor explained. Our readers prefer love stories with happy endings. What will happen to the advance they paid Ashley? That's between us and Ms. Richardson, but I will say that misrepresenting story elements violates our contributor agreements. Saturday morning, exactly 1 week after the canceled wedding, Marcus came to my house with news that surprised me. Dad, I got a call from Damon yesterday. He wants to hire me to help with his business expansion. Doing what? Marketing, business development, the kind of corporate strategy work I do at the firm. But for small businesses, real people building honest enterprises. And you're interested. I'm interested in work that feels meaningful. Damon's building something real, helping families preserve memories instead of manufacturing images. What about your job at the law firm? I'll keep it for now. Do consulting work on weekends, but Dad, I want to build something I can be proud of without having to pretend I'm someone else. That afternoon, we drove to Ruth's grave together. It was the first time Marcus had visited since the funeral, and I watched him kneel beside the headstone with tears in his eyes. Mom, I'm sorry I lost my way for a while. I forgot what you and Dad taught me about what matters. I knelt beside him. She knows, son. and she's proud of the choice you made." We sat there for a while in comfortable silence, father and son reconnected by shared loss and renewed understanding. Sunday evening, as October settled into November and the worst crisis of our relationship moved into memory, Marcus helped me prepare dinner in the kitchen where everything had started with that invoice for $190,000. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you think I'll ever find someone who loves me for who I actually am?" "I think you already know someone who loves you for who you actually are." "Who?" "Yourself." And that's where every healthy relationship starts. As we cooked together, sharing stories and jokes, I felt Ruth's presence in a way I hadn't since she died. Not as sadness or loss, but as completion. We'd raised a good man who'd temporarily lost his way but found his path back to the values that mattered. The wedding that was supposed to cost $190,000 had ended up costing something much more valuable and much more affordable: the illusions that were keeping Marcus from becoming himself. And that, as Ruth would have said, was money well spent. The aftermath taught us both that love isn't something you buy, status isn't something you borrow, and family isn't something you upgrade. These are lessons that can't be learned from books or seminars, only from the kind of experience that breaks your heart just enough to let the light in. Marcus was free to build a life based on truth instead of image, and I was free to be proud of the man he was becoming instead of worried about the man he was pretending to be. It was in every way that mattered the best possible ending to the worst possible beginning. 2 months after the canceled wedding, Marcus and I established new traditions that felt more honest than anything we'd shared in years. Sunday dinners became sacred time, just the two of us in my kitchen cooking recipes Ruth had taught us and talking about everything except what we'd lost. Marcus had returned the engagement ring to the jeweler where Ashley had originally selected it. The store manager, surprisingly sympathetic to the situation, had refunded 60% of the purchase price despite their no-return policy. "Dad, I kept expecting to feel sad about giving it back," Marcus told me over pot roast and mashed potatoes. But all I felt was relief, like I was finally returning something that never really belonged to me. How so? That ring represented a version of myself I was trying to become. Successful enough, sophisticated enough, worthy enough for Ashley's world. When I realized I didn't want to be that person, the ring became meaningless. The financial cleanup had taken longer but proved equally liberating. Marcus closed Richardson Lifestyle Enterprises, which required Ashley's signature and led to their final conversation. According to Marcus, she'd signed the dissolution papers without comment, as if the business had never meant anything more than a convenient way to hide purchases. "She kept the jewelry," Marcus said. "Apparently that was always the plan. Build a collection of expensive pieces that would appreciate in value while someone else paid for them." "Are you bitter about that?" "I was for about a week. Then I realized I was bitter about being deceived, not about losing access to overpriced accessories. The anger faded when I understood that keeping those things probably hurts Ashley more than losing them hurts me." "How do you figure?" "Because now she owns thousands of dollars worth of jewelry she can't wear without being reminded of how she got it. Every bracelet, every necklace is evidence of choices she made that cost her a relationship with someone who actually loved her." Marcus had also restructured his debt obligations with Kevin Shaw's successor, a legitimate financial planner who specialized in helping young professionals recover from poor decisions. The payment plan would take 3 years instead of Shaw's promised 6 months, but the interest rate was reasonable and the terms were transparent. "It's strange, Dad. Paying my own debts feels better than having someone else cover them, even when it's harder." "That's called dignity. Is it always this expensive?" "The good kinds of dignity usually are." Our relationship had rebuilt itself around shared work rather than shared crisis. Marcus started spending Saturdays helping me maintain Ruth's garden, learning the difference between annual and perennial flowers, understanding why some things need to be replanted every year while others send down deep roots. "Mom knew what she was doing with this garden," he said one afternoon, carefully transplanting seedlings Ruth had started the spring before she died. "Every plant has a purpose, a season, a relationship with everything around it." Your mother approached relationships the same way. She believed in creating something that would last beyond the people who started it. "Is that why you fought so hard to keep me from marrying Ashley?" Because you could see it wouldn't last? I fought because I could see it was destroying who you were in the present. Whether it lasted didn't matter if it cost you yourself. The community response to the canceled wedding had surprised us both. People Marcus thought were friends had disappeared when the expensive parties stopped. But neighbors we barely knew had reached out with support, understanding, and invitations to simpler gatherings where authenticity mattered more than image. Mrs. Henderson from down the street invited me to her grandson's birthday party, Marcus told me. When I asked why, she said because I seemed like someone who'd actually enjoy watching a 5-year-old blow out candles. And did you? More than I enjoyed any of Ashley's networking events. There's something beautiful about celebration that doesn't require documentation. Marcus had also reconnected with friends Ashley had subtly discouraged him from seeing. Damon, of course, but also college roommates who worked as teachers and social workers, people whose lives weren't designed for Instagram but who remembered Marcus's birthday and called when they were worried about him. Dad, I think I confused success with performance for so long that I forgot what accomplishment actually feels like. What does it feel like? Quieter, more personal, like something you carry inside instead of something you display for others. As winter settled over, Charlotte Marcus made a decision that surprised even me. He applied for a position with a nonprofit organization that provided financial literacy education to families in underserved communities. It's a pay cut, he admitted, but it's work that matters, teaching people to avoid the kind of debt traps I fell into, helping families make decisions based on their values instead of their aspirations. Ruth would be proud. I hope so. I want to build something she would recognize as worthwhile. And the final piece of closure came in December when Ashley sent Marcus a letter. Not an email or a text, but a handwritten note on expensive stationery that probably cost more than most people spent on lunch. Marcus showed it to me not because he needed advice about how to respond, but because transparency had become important to him. Dear Marcus, it read, I've had time to think about what happened between us, and I want you to know that I understand your perspective. I may have lost sight of what was truly important in my desire to create something beautiful for both of us. I hope you find happiness with someone who appreciates the life you want to build. With respect, Ashley. What do you think? Marcus asked. I think it's a well-written non-apology that takes responsibility for nothing while sounding gracious. That's what I thought too. Should I respond? Do you want to? No. And that tells me everything I need to know about how I've healed. On Christmas morning, Marcus and I cooked breakfast together in my kitchen while snow fell outside the windows. We'd invited Damon and his girlfriend along with Mrs. Henderson and her grandson, creating the kind of celebration Ruth would have loved, simple, genuine, focused on gratitude rather than spectacle. Dad, Marcus said as we set the table with Ruth's everyday dishes instead of the fine china Ashley would have insisted on, can I tell you something I've learned? Always. Real love doesn't need a costume or a spotlight. It doesn't require approval from strangers or validation from social media. When you chose authenticity over applause, you chose the man Mom raised over the image Ashley crafted. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the courage to disappoint the wrong people. A father's job isn't to fund his child's fantasies, it's to model what integrity looks like when the lights go dim and the cameras stop rolling. I looked at my son. Really looked at him and saw someone Ruth would recognize. Not perfect, not without scars, but honest in a way that made everything else possible. Marcus, your mother would say that's the best Christmas present she could have asked for. What's that? Watching her son choose love over leverage, substance over show, family over fashion. As our guests arrived, and the house filled with laughter that didn't need to be performed for anyone, I understood that the most expensive education Marcus had ever received was also the most valuable. He'd learned the difference between what costs money and what costs nothing, between what impresses people and what actually matters, between love that comes with conditions and love that comes with commitments. The wedding that never happened had taught us both something no ceremony could have provided, that the best relationships are built on truth, sustained by respect and celebrated by people who love you exactly as you are, exactly where you come from, exactly as you choose to be. And that, as Ruth would have said, is worth more than all the jewelry in Charlotte. Real love doesn't need a costume or a spotlight. It doesn't require approval from strangers or validation from social media. When my son chose authenticity over applause, he chose the man his mother raised over the image his fiancé crafted. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the courage to disappoint the wrong people. A father's job isn't to fund his child's fantasies, it's to model what integrity looks like when the lights go dim and the cameras stop rolling. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear that real love doesn't require a performance and family bonds are worth more than social status.